Hi and welcome. I'm Antoinette Trimble, a registered architect. In this video, we're talking about something that every architect will encounter at some point in their practice, delivering bad news to a client.
Hi, I'm Allison Tsao, an organization development practitioner. This video is part of a series developed in partnership with the Architects Registration Board of Victoria to help registered architects communicate more effectively, including in the moments that feel most uncomfortable.
Today, we're covering two things: establishing a communication protocol early and practical tips for handling common situations where you may have to deliver bad news.
Antoinette, one of the most consistent themes that comes up when architects find themselves in difficult conversations is that the difficulty was made worse by the absence of agreed communication expectations at the outset. Does that match your experience?
Absolutely. When there's no agreed protocol, no shared understanding of how and when the architect will communicate, what will be reported on and when, clients tend to fill that vacuum with anxiety, and an anxious client is much harder to have difficult conversations with.
Mm. And this isn't just good practice, it's a professional obligation. Under the Victorian Architects Code of Professional Conduct, Clause 64J requires that every client architect agreement must include information about how the architect will inform the client of progress in the provision of services. This must be agreed to in writing upfront before any work begins.
And Clause 9 of the Code goes further. It sets out in detail what effective and prompt communication with clients actually requires. So architects must keep clients adequately informed about project process, take reasonable steps to ensure clients have information they need to make decisions in a timely way, and most importantly, promptly advise a client in writing if any circumstance likely to prevent the architect from providing services as agreed occurs.
So, what does a good communication protocol look like in practice?
At minimum, it should cover three things. So firstly, the cadence. So how often will you update the client? Will it be weekly, fortnightly, at project milestones? Secondly, the format. Will the updates be written, verbal, or in meetings? And the third is the trigger. What are the circumstances in which you will contact the client immediately, regardless of the usual schedule? The third one is where bad news comes in. So agreeing up front that you will always flag significant changes as soon as they arise, before they become problems, sets the expectation and removes the awkwardness of raising that later.
And it builds trust. When a client knows you will always tell them what's happening, including the difficult things, they feel more secure. They don't have to chase you for information, and they don't feel like they're being managed. That security is the foundation that makes hard conversations possible. So let's talk about the situations themselves. What are the most common types of bad news architects have to deliver?
There are four I'd highlight. The first is changes in scope, where what the client wants or what the project requires has shifted from what was originally agreed. The second one is timeline delays, construction running over schedule, approvals taking longer, contractor issues. The third one is approval-related news, where something the client loves is not feasible or a planning approval has come back with conditions that really limit what's possible. And the fourth is the most confronting. It's cost escalation.
Oh, yeah. Let's spend a moment on cost escalation specifically, because I know that's been a particularly acute issue in the last few years.
That's right, it's been significant. Construction costs have escalated dramatically in recent years, and in some cases, tender prices come back at double the estimates. So that's genuinely shocking for a client to hear, particularly one who's been planning and saving for a project for years. And importantly, the code speaks directly to this. So Clause 64G, the client agreement must include a requirement that the architect inform the client how a change to their services will affect fees and costs, and crucially, when and why professional fees may escalate. And this needs to be front-loaded into the engagement, not just disclosed when they've escalated.
So, what are the practical tips for handling those kinds of moments well?
Okay, three things with that. The first is to tell them early. The moment you know something has changed, that's when you communicate it, not when you've figured out a solution and not when you just can't avoid it any longer. Early disclosure gives the client agency. It allows them to be part of the response rather than just being a victim of the outcome. The second is separate the facts from your interpretation. Tell the client what has happened and then tell them what it means. Keep those two things distinct. Clients often react to information that feels mixed together or where they sense that the architect's hiding something from them rather than being just direct with them. And the third is come with options, not just a problem. And architects are typically so good at this. Even if none of the options are ideal, giving the client a choice restores their sense of control. But don't just jump straight into the solutions. Make sure you do steps 1 and 2 before, so they understand the problem first and why you're proposing the changes. And then they have ownership in the decision-making process.
And I'd add a fourth in there. So wherever possible, have these conversations in person or by phone before you email them. A written message without context can land harder than it needs to be. The conversation first, followed by written confirmation, is usually the better sequence.
To recap, start with a communication protocol. Agree with your client in writing at the outset how and when you will keep them informed. This isn't optional under the updated code, it's a professional requirement.
When difficult news arises, and it will, tell the client early. Separate the facts from the interpretation and come with options. And wherever possible, have the conversation before you put it in writing.
Thanks for watching. We hope this video has given you the tools you can use in your very next difficult conversation.
See you in the next one.